Good morning, Year 11. I hope you're well and having a lovely day. So, before we get started, I just wanted to congratulate you once again on your fantastic speeches. I know I've done this a few times now, and you're probably getting bored of it, but I have to say they were so good. They were really thoughtful, you met all the success criteria, and they were a real delight to read. No teacher likes marking, but I have to say, I thoroughly enjoyed looking through your speeches because I really felt that your voice came through in terms of your writing style. The sophisticated vocabulary was so much better than I've ever seen, and overall, they were really thoughtful, well constructed, and a real triumph in terms of your success as writers. So, really well done once again. So, moving on to today's lesson, I think it'll be our last one on functional writing. Could you please write the date and the title of functional writing? And then for your do now, I'd like you to read the 2 grade 9 answers that I've attached on class charts. And for each one, consider how it meets the success criteria. So you may want to jot down notes in your book or on the speeches themselves. You don't have to print them out. However, I think it would be a good idea to either save them onto your computer or print them out so that you can look over them again when you're coming to do your revision, because I think they'll be really good as model answers. So you don't need to write anything down, but I think you can do if you think it would be helpful. So pause the video to read those 2 answers now. Okay, so the success criteria. I know you know it by this point, but I am going to go through it one more time because today's lesson is based around the success criteria. So I would like you to listen to this one more time. So you must understand the purpose of your writing and adapt the form accordingly. So it's going to be really clear why you're writing. Functional means for a purpose. So what is your purpose? That must be blatantly clear throughout and through the structure. And adapt the form means make it really clear, in this case that it's a speech. Tone, style and register must be ambitious and enhance the purpose, so it's got to be sophisticated. Controlled overall structure, without fail, you all did this perfectly. So whether or not you used the template, as I instructed you to do, you all did a fantastic structure, so well done. Sophisticated vocabulary. Again, this was brilliantly done. It may be to do with the fact that I've shown you how to use the synonyms tool on Word, but regardless, you were using the high quality vocabulary that I've always wanted. However, if you did use that tool to help you, please do make sure that you've learnt any new words so that you're able to use them again in exam conditions. Because bear in mind, what you write during lockdown, it's not during exam conditions. So whilst it may give you an indication of what you're capable of, it can't be taken into evidence when I'm making your next forecast. So make sure you're revising this speech because all of them were fantastic, and I would hate for you to write something so amazing in lockdown and not quite manage it in exam conditions. So do keep it safe, look over it when you come to revise. Sophisticated punctuation was fantastic. I saw colons and semicolons and dashes and a whole plethora of interesting and sophisticated punctuation, ellipsis. So that was really well done. Variety of sentence structures. What really impressed me, a lot of people were using consecutive short sentences for effect, for emphasis, which was brilliant. And there was a huge variety of sentence structures and sentence types, which is fantastic. Variety of paragraph lengths. So a point on that, it's not just one sentence paragraphs, it's having longer and shorter paragraphs. So you were all doing that, which is brilliant. And finally, spelling and grammar was fantastic. The best I've ever seen. Could be the fact that you're typing it up on Word. Barely any spelling. I don't think I've seen any spelling mistakes. 1 or 2 grammar mistakes. So I think when we go back, it'll just be really important that you're really focusing on that, because obviously if it's done on Word, you've got the red and the green lines to help you, and you won't in the exam, sadly. So do make sure you're reading, because that will help with your spelling and grammar. So that's the success criteria. Areas for improvement, like I said, overall really fantastic. So something I saw a bit, people overusing rhetorical questions. always go on about how rhetorical questions are really powerful because they cause the reader to think. It creates a pause and it's a chance for them to reflect and engage with the content of your speech. So definitely use them. However, if you're using 3 or 4 per paragraph, then it gets a bit wearisome and you entirely lose the effect of the rhetorical question. So I would say, on occasion, yes, use them, maybe 3 in your whole speech, not 3 per paragraph. You can have 3 in a paragraph. I think I did that in my Fox speech. But then in the next paragraph, you wouldn't have 3. You would have none or maybe 1. So just be really careful that you're not overusing them because then they lose their effect. So give it a personal touch early on. So my favourite moments in your speeches was when you made it personal, and regardless of whether it was true or not, I was often trying to work out and I didn't know. But if you add in a personal touch, then that makes it memorable and it makes the reader connect. So, for instance, in one, it was talking about how corporal punishment, so physical punishment in schools, could be used to reduce bullying. And there was this really lovely section. So many schools propagate the idea that bullying is absolutely forbidden, but many people, like me, know this just isn't true. And it was such an authentic, personal statement that really supported their argument because they made it personal, they made it relevant, and they made it something that you would remember going forward. And you connect with them and you connect with the speech. So do try and give it that personal touch because it makes all the difference. And I would do it earlier on, like sooner rather than later. It can be an anecdote, it can be an opinion, or like that particular student. It was just 2 words, like me. And it just made it so much more relevant and so much more personal. So I would put that personal touch earlier on because then you've made that connection with the reader or the audience. Most of you did this, but a couple of you forgot. So do make sure you have a counter argument and then knock it down. Remember, I think one person used a counter argument and didn't knock it down, and that would undermine your argument. So put forward an opposing argument, but then make sure you've really thoroughly demolished it. Otherwise, you're undermining your own position. So final thoughts. Position of the counter argument. So I suggested having it before the conclusion. So you're firmly establishing your own position. Then you're putting forward the strongest counter argument and knocking it down. Some people, in terms of structuring their argument, like having the counter argument after the introduction. So they introduce their position, put forward the strongest counter argument, and knock it down. I personally don't like that. I don't think it's as clear, but it's just something to think about. There's no right or wrong place. However, I would say don't put it in the middle. So don't have a point for your argument, then a counter, then another point for your argument. I'd rather have it at the start of after the introduction or before the conclusion. Signpost sentences. So I know I said in the live lesson that they can look a bit clunky and immature, but actually I saw them used really well. So if you want to use signpost sentences, you can do so. Someone proved me wrong with this. So whilst it's not something I would do, they can be used well, and I've seen that done. So if you want to use them, if they'll help you, you can do so. And finally, sophisticated vocab. I've talked about this before. If you've used the synonyms tool to learn some new words or insert them, please do make sure you learn them because then you can recycle them in exam conditions. So could you please make a note of what I've got on this slide? So, how did you meet the success criteria? What I'd like you to do is go through your answer and highlight and or annotate to show me how you met the success criteria. So as you know, when I'm marking, I often annotate for 2 reasons. Firstly, to show you how you're meeting the success criteria, and secondly, to help me when it comes to marking it, because I can see at a glance, okay, this person has loads of variety of sentence structures, they've used a lot of techniques, they have a whole plethora of sophisticated punctuation, they're clearly a certain grade. So what I want you to do, since I'm not doing that, on this occasion, I would like you to do what I would normally do. And that will help you work out what you're strong at and maybe what you could improve on. So, and also, after you've done that, when you've finished with the highlighting and annotating, I want you to go back through your speech and make 3 amendments in another colour to improve your answer. Next to each amendment, provide an annotation indicating its purpose. So let's say you realise that you haven't used any tricolons and you're lacking variety of sentence length and sophisticated vocabulary. So you can meet all those 3 criteria with this tricolon. This is atrocious. This is barbaric. This is a travesty. So we've got a tricolon of short sentences emphasizing how terrible something is. We've got sophisticated vocabulary with atrocious. And then you've also got, imagine there's lots of long sentences. This would show short sentences. So that would be an example. So you would write that tricolon in a different color and you would put the annotation I have on the slide. So please could you now pause the video. Actually, before you do that, I have an example for you. So I'm going to read through this. This is out of all the speeches, this is my favourite paragraph from all the speeches. I would have been proud to have written this, so the person who wrote this should be extremely proud indeed. People need to be made aware of what mental illness actually is, and especially what it is not. We are beginning to lose our grip on what is an accurate representation of a disorder and what is beautiful suffering, the romanticized version of these illnesses. Depression is not black and white gifs and smudged mascara in the rain. It is staying in bed for days, being scared to wake up every time you go to sleep, and doing everything you can to feel something or nothing. Anxiety is not a cute quirk or feeling a bit shaky before a public speech. It is missing countless days of meetings and trips and parties and staying in your house for days on end to avoid seeing anybody. It is panic attacks in public places, on the bus, in a crowd, and sweaty hands and uncontrollable shaking. It's not beautiful, it's not cute, and it's definitely not desirable. Wow, what a powerful paragraph. So let's break this down and work out what makes it so good. So part of it is the insight into mental illness. The person who wrote this has extreme empathy, I believe, with particular groups of people. They wrote a vegetarianism speech at the beginning of year 10, and I was convinced they were a vegetarian. And they've done it again here. They've made it seem like they're talking about their own experiences of mental health, when I don't know whether that's true, but they've made it seem that way. They've made it seem very personal with the passion and emotion, emotive language, and that real insight and sophistication that they demonstrate throughout this whole paragraph. But we can break some of it down. So, beautiful suffering. The speech marks add an ironic tone. Also, they cleverly use juxtaposition. It's not quite an oxymoron, because beautiful and suffering aren't exact opposites. They're not mutually exclusive, you can have them together. But beautiful has connotations of desirable, charming, attractive. Suffering has connotations of despair, displeasure, something you want to avoid. So, but the adjective beautiful juxtaposes with the noun suffering. And I know some of you may be thinking suffering's a verb. To suffer is a verb. But here, suffering is a noun because it's the object of the sentence. So you could talk about the adjective beautiful juxtaposing with the noun suffering. And that shows, I feel like that juxtaposition really cleverly portrays the contrast or the dichotomy between appearance and reality, what people are seeing or perceiving as mental health issues and the cruel reality of what they're actually like. And then you've got sophisticated vocabulary with the word romanticized. As most of you will probably know, if something's romanticized, it's presented in an unrealistically attractive or positive way. So if you look back on your past, you could romanticize a particular memory which wasn't that great, but you make it seem like it was really good, and you could remember it in a unrealistically positive way due to a particular desire to see it in a positive light. And next we have really powerful use of anaphora. So we've got the repetition. So remember, anaphora is when you repeat the beginning of a sentence. So here we have depression is not, anxiety is not, and then we also have it is, it is. So by repeating it is and it is not, we have that clear sense of, we have that continued idea of appearance juxtaposing with reality. It is not, it is. It is not, it is. So this idea of knocking down these faux images and perceptions surrounding mental health and presenting instead this clear reality of what it truly is. And then the ending is even more powerful. I love this bit. It is missing countless days of meetings and trips and parties and staying in your house for days on end to avoid seeing anyone. So we've got polysyndeton, which is the repetition of a conjunction to emphasize the list. So we've got listing as well. I didn't put it in there, but you've got the structural technique of listing emphasized through polysyndeton, the repetition of the conjunction and this emphasizes the extensive effects of the anxiety. So it's not just one thing. It's not just missing a meeting or staying in a house for a day. It is this and this and this and this. So you can see how that list of effects and symptoms of the disorder is exaggerated through the use of polysyndeton in that particular sentence. So extremely effective there. And then it is panic attacks in public places, very subtle use of alliteration, on the bus, in a crowd. And what I quite like there, they have the opposite of polysyndeton. So whereas polysyndeton slows down a list, days of meetings and trips and parties and staying in your house. So we've got emphasis through slowing down the pace. The opposite is asyndeton, which is, A means without, which actually speeds up the pace. Panic attacks in public places, on a bus, in a crowd. So by taking away the conjunctions there, they've sped up the pace. And actually, what's so clever, they've actually almost created the effect of anxiety through the asyndeton, or you can call it asyndetic listing, public places, on the bus, in a crowd. And they could have actually made that even more powerful, but by taking away the ands. Panic attacks in public places, on the bus, in a crowd, sweaty hands, uncontrollable shaking. It's not beautiful. So that's what I would have done there, but still very effective. And at the end, we've got a contrast between that longer sentence with the asyndetic listing, contrasting with the tricolon of short sentences. And you've also got the anaphora, it's not, again contrasting appearance and reality. And then what I quite like is the colloquial word cute, because it's monosyllabic, so it kind of builds up this idea of these three short, brief sentences. It's not beautiful, it's not cute, and it's definitely not desirable. And definitely desirable, you've also got alliteration. So the repetition of not opposes the lie, completely demolishes it, and emphasizes the idea that runs through, that pervades this entire paragraph of reality being kind of used to negate this false reality created by social media. So, very detailed breakdown. Don't worry if yours isn't as, technically on point as this particular one. It was an exceptional paragraph. So don't worry if it isn't quite as detailed. You can still get a really good mark without using this extent of language and structure devices. But I did want you to be able to see and break down what is pretty much a model paragraph. So what I'd like to do now is go to your own essay, your own speech, and what I've done for this paragraph, I would like you to do for your own paragraphs. And then after you've done that, remember 3 amendments, go back through, add in 3 additional sentences or sections, that better enable you to meet the success criteria. So pause the video to do that now. So, final task, upgrade the paragraph. What I'd like you to do is revise the following paragraph so it meets the success criteria, annotate it to show me how you have met it. So I'm going to give you free license on how you amend it. It's not very good, and that was intentional, so you can amend it as much as you want. So I'll read through it with you. Home learning is so much better than learning at school. You can get up whenever you want, wear what you want, and snack when you want. You don't have to waste energy on pointless conversations, and you don't damage the planet by travelling to school. You can still communicate with friends via social media, and you have extra time to take up new hobbies. As a point of interest, I thoroughly agree with what I wrote. However, it's not well written. So, what I'd like you to do is kind of take those points, but just upgrade it. Sophisticated vocabulary, variety of sentence structures, you know the drill, all the success criteria. So, you've got to kind of keep the ideas in that paragraph, but you can rewrite it to make it more sophisticated. And for a challenge, if you were writing a full argument, what would be a major problem with this paragraph? So I'll be really interested to see if you can get that. So pause the video, please, to do that now. Okay, so thank you very much for your work today. 2 final points before I end my video. Firstly, don't worry if your answer wasn't as good as the 2 model answers that I put on class charts. They were exceptional. I would have given both of them 38 out of 40. So you don't need to get a mark that high to do well. So don't panic if what you're writing isn't quite the same level. You can still do really well, even if it's not quite as good. But they're just something to aspire to, and hopefully you can pick up some tips. And secondly, do make sure you're reading non-fiction as well. In terms of creative writing, what helps you there is reading fiction. Whereas with non-fiction, obviously you want to read things like the news, not just the BBC. I'm a bit guilty of this. I do have the BBC app, which I tend to use the most, but do try and read things from The Guardian, The Economist, and also just generally, if you're interested in something, make sure you're reading articles about it, because you'll just pick up phrasing, you'll understand structure better. So do take the time, ideally every day, to do some research into areas that you're interested in and read articles about them, because doing that will really benefit you overall in terms of your ability to write for a purpose. Okay, so that is the end now. I'm going to stop talking, and I shall speak to you again tomorrow. So thank you for your work and have a lovely rest of your day.